What's up, y'all? This is MVP with Juxtaposed, and today we're going to talk about affirmative action and the Supreme Court and the decisions they made recently. Stay tuned.
Oh, we are back for another episode of Juxtaposed. Today we're going to take on the Supreme Court, who has been on a tear, just knocking things down one by one. But today we're going to talk about the affirmative action ruling that they had recently. And we have a couple guests to do so. First, MVP. He just introduced himself, so I don't need to tell anybody about him. But you know who MVP is. We have Darlene, who's new to our podcast, but a part of the In-Crowd family. We have Aaron, Power Finance. You seen him, you know him.
I'm not new here.
Hey, we're about to get into it. So, where do we start? I mean, I feel like we've heard the word affirmative action so much I feel like growing up, it's a thing I've heard a lot, especially in America, since I've moved to America. What are your thoughts on affirmative action? I guess we could start that. How much do you know about affirmative action, and what are your thoughts on it? I don't know, whoever wants to start. Jump on in.
All right, okay. So I guess I'll start then, because I think of the entire group, I'd like to assume that I'm the least educated on this matter. What I understand affirmative action to be is that America, being the country that it is, has a very racist past. And as a result of that very racist past, where there was segregation and all of these different things at play, in order to level the playing field, so to speak, minorities, which isn't just people that look like us, but women, people from other parts of the world, like you might have Mexicans, Native Americans, just minorities in general, are given an opportunity to participate in things that would have otherwise kept them outside of that area. So we're talking about education, we're talking about employment, just things of that nature. So as opposed to dealing with the almost racist hierarchy of the way things have been working, that is a way of somewhat leveling the playing field, giving opportunities where they would not have otherwise existed. That's what I understand it to be. In terms of the qualifications, other than your skin color or you being a member of a minority group, I'm not too sure what else is required. So that's my understanding of it. That's how I've always understood it.
Yeah, so I have to say, if I could tack on to that, honestly, Aaron, you kind of explained it perfectly, so I don't want to, beat a dead horse there. But I think this was affirmative action in its purest form in the very beginning, 1960s, whenever it started, was America's attempt to potentially or hopefully right its wrongful racist actions. And then that sort of snowballed into other underrepresented groups in society. That was a good thing that we were going down that path, but I don't know if it was essentially what we call like scope creep in the, program management world, where it's just things being added on without any thought as to what's the actual goal, what is the solution there. So that's personally what I think affirmative action is. It's a goal, a pie in the sky dream that might not have actually, accomplished everything that it wanted to accomplish.
That makes sense. I mean, I think, funny enough, Aaron, you said you probably were the least educated on it, and you nailed the what is thing perfectly. So I don't. You might be selling yourself a little short there, sir. But either way, I think the general consensus of this was an ability or an attempt to rebalance the opportunities for people who may not have had it, and that's the minorities, and it says actually underrepresented groups in society. And it was mainly around hiring and educational opportunities, which a lot of times, I mean, that's some of the biggest things. If you don't have your education or you don't have ability to get a job, then you're kind of, a weird place. So, all right. So I guess the question to jump into is like, why do we feel like the Supreme Court now has been first? I mean, first it was Roe v. Wade. Now it's affirmative action. Why this and why now? What are your thoughts on that?
You want me to start again? In terms of, all right. So it seems like right now, in terms of the political just climate in America, at least as long as I've lived here in the United States and paid attention to politics, it seems like there's a lot more conflict between what's going on the left and what's going on the right. And we've gotten to a place where politically, it seems like a lot of things are unbalanced. And I'm almost assuming this is the right's way of balancing some of the wrongs, because if you pay attention to what's happening just politically, a lot of the things that they stand for are kind of getting shifted to the wayside here in the United States. And I almost see it as them trying to find a way to say, hey, this is what we're going to do because this is our beliefs, instead of all of the conservative beliefs being fully removed and it turning into just a completely liberal United States of America. They need to stick us with a little bit of their conservatism. At least that's what I assume. I don't necessarily know what the actual reasoning is behind it because, like Styles said, this just kind of came out of nowhere.
I'd like to give a politically correct answer and then maybe one that might not be so politically correct, if that's all right.
Go on.
All right. So I'll start with the politically correct. I do think there are some very corrupted usages of affirmative action where you will see folks that may not be qualified for a role, but just essentially a checkbox getting into positions or into academia, whatever that may be. And you're not setting that person up for success. It's not really helpful to the organization. And so I can see the cons on that side. Like maybe let's roll back or dial back what affirmative action is. Now, I personally don't think taking it away is the best solution, but I can see the reasoning for that. So that's my politically correct answer. Now, my personal answer is that I feel this is kind of like fashion. So take a step back and look at it globally. If you look at everywhere in the world, this is outside of affirmative action, just everywhere now, you'll notice we're starting to go backwards. And the reason why I say it reminds me of fashion, it's as though it's like I wear high-waisted jeans that, a generation ago would never have been acceptable. But it's almost like whatever was fashionable back in the day, similar to Aaron's point of getting back to that conservative point of like almost balancing, essentially, as Obama had said, taking, 3 steps forward and then, 5 steps back or whatever. I personally think that's what's happening here. It's like a fashionable thing where whatever seemed to be out of fashion is now coming back into fashion. We're seeing that across the globe, not just in the United States.
Interesting.
That is a very interesting point, yeah.
I like it, though.
Because that's interesting. I like that. You almost messed up my thought because I'm like, my thing is, I think they just want to show people that they're doing stuff. I think a lot of times when people just come out of nowhere with stuff that they're solving for, like the pregnancy, abortions, and stuff like that, like I feel like they just need people to see that they're paying attention to this. But it's like, is this really something you need to solve for right now? And that's where I get the idea of like, they're just trying to show people, like, I think someone said checking off boxes. It's like, hey, we're doing this thing, so you can't say we wasn't on this. But it's like, yeah, but if you come at it in a weird way without preparation, I feel like that's an issue. So, and when the preparation is there, I feel like there's more of a like heads up, more of a plan of what's going on. And I just feel like they were just like, hey, nothing else is going on right now. And we can't solve the things that people actually want us to solve for. So we'll just throw something on the table to say, hey, at least we're doing stuff. That's how I'm feeling about it.
Well, one of the things that not to get too deep into politics, but one of the things I know that has happened, I know this whole thing is a political.
I was about
It was a political topic.
Not to get too deep.
Not to get too deep. All right. But I think that because the makeup of the Supreme Court now leans heavily to like Republican, I think they're using this opportunity to change the things that are benefiting their point of view. So that's why I think this is a thing. My uneducated, opinion is that this is the opportunity. We know that there was a lot of fun things that happened during the last president's tenure, where he got a bunch of people on there that whatever. I don't even I don't even get too deep with that. He stacked the chips on his side for his party, and I think we're seeing that the balance is not there anymore. So now they're winning on the things that they care about. So that answers kind of like why this is a now thing. I guess my question is, now that we set the stage for what it is and how it's been used a little bit, how do we personally feel about affirmative action? Because there was a weird point in history where affirmative action also seemed to be applied primarily to Black people, which we all are, I think. Just have to throw that in there. But how do we feel?
Hold on, let me check my ancestry real quick.
I don't want to assume anybody's race. I don't do that. But the question is, how do we, as the people who it was kind of been assigned to, or the stereotype of it being assigned to, how do we feel about it in before, and how do we feel about it now that it's being kind of revoked? Loaded question, but feel free to jump in.
Well, so I'm gonna say a little bit because I don't know a lot about it, but I think that there's some good and bad. I think that it is necessary to a certain extent, but I'm gonna let Aaron or Darlene go with a little bit more of maybe.
Well, hold on. I feel like you're for lack of a better term, pussyfooting out. What you say it's necessary?
I mean, I might be tiptoeing. Yeah, a little.
Yeah, well, listen here, Sammy Davis Jr. I'm gonna need you to not tiptoe.
Well, once again, I do want to remind us this is the place in Crowd and Juxtaposed where this is supposed to be for these challenging conversations. So there's no time to be tiptoeing. There's a place for you to learn, a place for you to give your opinion, and if your opinion is not really the right one, then you're in a safe place to recorrect and learn some stuff. So
there you go.
No, as Aaron said, no tap dancing, Sammy. Let's
yeah.
Give
up the
that
goods.
sounded horrible.
Why you bring him into this?
That's how I wasn't me.
That's what he was known for.
Anyway,
would you rather Savion Glover?
Yeah. Okay.
True.
Well, all right. So MVP, you essentially just got a reverse card pulled on you. What are your what are the like goods and what's the good and bad? Let's just talk. Give a brief idea of what you think it is, and then we'll move on to whoever was next.
Thank you for the floor.
No
so
problem.
The first thing is, I think it's important to keep people in check, right? Like, I understand that you don't want to get accolades just because of your race or gender or whatever it is, right? But I do think that, and this is, I would say going back, if I can get the date right, whenever it was like implemented, but like, I think some of the white people was like, yo, I'm white and I know I need to check my peers. So here's this affirmative action policy to help get my peers in check, because I know that they're not going to be paying attention to this. And so when you create the policy, now people have to pay attention to it, right? But then, so that's the good part, right? Like now you have to you can't just hire me because I look like you. You know what I mean? Like you can't just hire me because I'm your cousin's father's baby, daddy's sister's brother. And it's like, yo, he's white and he's related all the way up to my ancestors, so I'm gonna hire him. Now you have to be like, yo, I gotta hire minorities, brown people, Black people, women, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I think that it does serve a purpose to keep those people who either don't pay attention to that or don't want to pay attention to that. And it's like, nah, you have to. And I know there's people out there who's not going to do it, so let me implement it. But then I'm like, on the other hand, it's, hey, I don't want you to just give me things just because I am a minority. Like, I do believe in earning, renegade, ride out. Like I feel like you gotta earn your keep. You gotta earn your keep, bro.
Like, with that one.
I'm sorry. It's music, hip hop. But I'm like, I feel like you have to earn your keep, and I'm like, I don't want people to abuse it either way, right? Like, I don't want you to abuse it to the point where, like, now you're just hiring just to meet a quota, right? Like, I don't want you to just hire just to get the numbers on. Like, you actually still have to make sure people are meeting the requirements, but also include minorities. And I'm gonna stop it right there, because I don't know nothing about affirmative action, but I know a little bit.
Isn't it funny how he went from, like, I'm gonna just say a little two things, and then having a whole, like, yo, man, stop blocking your blocking.
Someone pussyfooting in Aaron's words.
Yeah.
Hey, man,
Anyway.
you got the floor and you decided not to tap dance. I like it.
But I started dancing a little bit. You know what I mean?
You did a little jig,
a little something.
All right, who wants to go next?
I got a point that Nick actually mentioned. Like, it's interesting that we all immediately think affirmative action is for Black people, whereas the order in the mid-60s was only stated underrepresented minorities, which honestly in the United States is likely coded language for Black people. And then that turned into brown people, it turned into women. So I personally, the way I feel about it is that I feel affirmative action is just another example of, I guess, having good intentions to solve for something, but not really, again, pussyfooting. Maybe that's the theme of this whole conversation, not actually really solving the core issue. Because if we're using coded language in our own legal terminology meant to help specific groups of people, we're never actually going to be able to help those people. Like, the reason why, I'll quickly shut up here, but I have a personal example of why I feel mixed about affirmative action. I remember when I was graduating high school, my history professor, his daughter got into the same undergrad that I did. I got a full scholarship. She did not. And the first thing he said to me was, oh, it's a really good thing that you're Black because, that's how you got this.
Unacceptable.
Yeah, considering I graduated top of the class, literally. I was a captain of 3 sports. I could go on and on about all of my accolades. And so to me, it said to me, it's interesting that you equate my ability to get into the same school your daughter did to the color of my skin and not to my own merit, which then is why I feel mixed about affirmative action. Because would I have gotten into that school if people like my history teacher thought like him, if there weren't something like affirmative action in place? So then for me, from that point, I always thought, okay, look, if I am going to be seen as the Black checkbox, how can I make it basically change opinions about that? So kind of mixed, but it shows me there's a need for something in place, but we just haven't found the right way to execute it.
Can I ask how you reacted to it when he made that statement?
Yeah, as a dumb teenager, I'm just laughing like, oh, maybe. Now, if he actually said that to me nowadays, I literally would have listed out everything that I just said to you, because I was a little bit shocked at first and then thought, well, maybe he might be right. So it's a disappointing thing to hear yourself say that when you think back. This was like, I don't know, well over, honestly, I don't even know how old I'm at this point. It's well over a decade. I'm not going to try and age myself here.
Don't age yourself.
I know. But I was shocked, but just took it as, well, that might be a normal response.
Interesting. I have a petty question, and then I'll let you go, Aaron. What was the GPA of his daughter? Because I feel like if she was not in the top of the class, we shouldn't be talking about anything. But I'm being petty, so I'll let you.
I can't speak on that. We didn't go to the same high school, so she went to a different school and everything. But gotcha. I can bet you it was likely higher than hers.
Wow. Anyway, go ahead, Aaron.
No, that's such an insulting thing to say to someone, and it's like in my head, I'm like, this is the reason why I have to continue to practice stoicism, because you say something like that to me, and I might have likely put your head through the wall. Are you kidding me? What kind of insulting statement is that to say to someone? Like, people, it's too safe for some people. You know what? I'm getting off on a tangent. No, he felt safe to be able to say something like that is what I'm saying. You know, if it's quite possible if he was standing in front of someone like me, he would have never said that. You know, I don't anyway. But to go back to what took place with Darlene, that's specifically the reason why me personally, I don't know that I'm a big fan of it in today's climate. And I'm saying today's climate operating under the assumption that we're not still dealing with the same types of racist mentalities in the workplace and school systems like we were 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, X amount of years ago. Clearly, those mindsets still exist. We're never going to get rid of those mindsets. They're always going to exist. But what is the percentage of people that think like that you still need to have systems in place like affirmative action? I think we can all agree unanimously as a group that we're not of the ilk or the generation that grew up with these quote unquote participation trophies. You were either first, second, third, in some places fourth and fifth got awards as well. But you didn't get an award just for participating. Yeah. And that's kind of where my mindset is. I was raised during a time where hard work is what garnered results, and you were rewarded based on that hard work, not because you looked a certain way or you fulfilled a certain group or anything like that. As a matter of fact, to say something a little bit offensive here, because that's kind of the person that I am.
Okay.
Duly noted.
Listen, there were special education classes for people who were not able to, compete with people that operated at a higher level, right? So I think of it in the same way. There was a league for people like that, and there were a league for people who operated at a higher level. And that's kind of the way I see things. I personally would never want to be put somewhere in order to just check a box to say, hey, at least we're being diverse, at least we're being inclusionary. No, absolutely not. I want to be in the position like Darlene was in. Not only did I make it there, but I wiped the floor with all of you. And here's my accolades. Say something now. You have nothing that you can say to me. And that's the position I want to be in, because I think it's insulting, not just to Black people, to anyone of any race, color, creed, minority group, to be able to achieve something and then have someone say, oh, you only got here because you're fulfilling this check mark. No, I'm the best. I worked hard for this, and that's why I'm here. And again, this mindset is only based on the fact that we're not dealing with the same political, mental, racist climate that America was built upon. If we're still working on those types of systems, then we need to find a way to dethrone those systems so that everyone gets a fair shot and their hard work is what gets them to where they need to be. And that's kind of, to take something that should have been a short answer. That's the reason why I personally am not really in favor of it. I'm either the best and I got here because of that, or I'm not the best and I need to go back to the drawing board and keep working. I don't want you to say anything about my skin tone. I don't even want to check off the race that I am, because I don't want any assumptions made about me. So, yeah, that's how I feel about the whole thing.
Well, it's funny because I feel like my feelings match pretty much everyone's here, where it's like, I understand why it was needed. Mm-hmm. And I understand in some cases it still needs, to Darlene's point earlier, we still need to have something in place because there's certain things that are going to happen. But I also don't want to ever be in a place where I did what I was supposed to do and just get put into a bucket because they're like, oh yeah, well, you're one of the good ones. That thing gets to me. It's the most I'm trying to think of the right word. It's the most frustrating thing to me to hear that, because it's like, you've just handicapped everything I just did. Because you're saying I'm only here because I fit a quota. And the quota thing is, I don't know if that's, and to use Aaron's term, in this current climate, I don't know if we didn't necessarily go about things with the quota in mind, but there is an inherent assumed quota that people apply to you based on your skin tone, your your gender. And I think that's why we're seeing, to go back to the question of like, why is the Supreme Court doing that now? Is I feel like there's a point where that they're trying to remove anything that would make anyone feel uncomfortable, but like at the same time, it's like you're not solving for the problem. And so we could go on all day about that, because I personally don't necessarily enjoy the feeling of being considered, oh, you're one of the good ones, or you're the one that, you just got in because you fit that, because there a lot of underperforming people in the majority that still are allowed to operate, where I have to be one of the good ones all the time. This is exhausting. I don't necessarily want that. So
just to jump in there from a different perspective, I understand the part of, not wanting to get things put your way when you didn't earn it. But I also would hate to be in a situation where I do, like run the gambit. Just take over everything, do great on everything, and you're like, nah, you're still not on the team. And it's like, I've seen people who are done less than me and they're on the team, and they just happen to be a different color, right? So that's the only thing I would say to that. I would hate for me to put in these accolades and do all the right things and not be able to join a team because of whatever, gender or race. And I'm like, with this being in place, it just puts in something that'll help like that not to happen. And that's why I'm like, I think it's necessary, right? Like, I've seen it happen too many times, at least even for me in like my own personal life, where I feel like because I was Black, even though like me, I don't know if people worked with me before, but like I take my work very seriously, right? So I'm like, even when I tell you, hey, this ain't where we should go, I feel like there's a little bit of like, this Black dude don't know what he's talking about. Until I give him receipts and I have to do all this. Like, one thing my parents has told me, bro, being Black, bro, you got to give 110. Like, period. Like, you can't just go in there speaking well and have the collar shirt. You got to do more than your counterpart who may be white. So I'm like, with that understanding, I'm not mad if you put some in policy where people will be like, yo, we're paying attention. We see you. These gentlemen over here who happen to be Black are doing very well. And the only reason why I'm here checking up on this is because of this affirmative action policy. I probably wouldn't have been paying attention to this. But now I'm here. Let's see what you've been doing. Let's see the audit. And I'm like, the audit would never happen if there isn't something that brings me over to even check on audit. So, yeah, I'm hitting my mic and stuff because I'm getting passionate. I'm like, my bad, listeners, if y'all hearing that. But I'm like, yo, I've been in situations where I think I did the best, and I've had people on my team said I did the best, and they're like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about.
So can I just ask you a quick question here?
For sure.
Do you think you're racist?
Hell no.
Okay. Now, there's a reason why I'm asking if you think you're racist. Mm-hmm. You said that you may have, I don't know what the exact scenario is that this took place under, but you said you may have given advice or spoke on something, and the individual that you said it to didn't believe that you were speaking from a place of knowledge because you were Black. And then you had to come with receipts. What gave you the impression that they were not adhering to your advice because you were Black?
Because I could see them adhering to somebody else's advice who didn't even give them receipts. They were just like, yo, this is what it is. And they're like, my level or lower. And they're like, okay. I'm like, hold on.
And you automatically assume that's because of race?
No, I'm not saying automatically assuming. I'm saying there's things in place. Because it might be, hey, I got dreads. And it's anybody who has dreads. It doesn't matter if you're Black or white, you have dreads. And dreads already has a connotation. I don't know the damn word. But like, when people see dreads, they think a certain thing. When people see dreads on a white person, they think a certain thing. When they see dreads on a black person, they think a certain thing. For the longest, they told me I couldn't have dreads because it's not professional. So I'm not just saying black. I'm saying it could be my appearance, period. And I'm like, affirmative action, I believe, allows you to not discriminate. It doesn't matter what that person looks like.
Well, wait, MVP, can I actually play devil's advocate there with that last statement you said?
Yeah.
Where affirmative action doesn't allow you to discriminate. So maybe on paper, it doesn't, because you're basically forcing people's hands to let in different groups. And this might not just be black. I want to say there are certain industries, schools, whatever you name it, where there might be only Asians, and that includes Southeast Asians. There might be only whites, only blacks. And affirmative action says, hey, all of these other groups are underrepresented. Therefore, you must not discriminate against them. However, once those groups come in, it goes beyond the law to stop somebody from actually acting in a discriminating manner. And I don't think affirmative action was really meant to solve the problem of discrimination. It was just meant to essentially make it easier or less of a problem on paper, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
Jump back in there, because now we throwing jabs a little bit to jump back in there. Cool, give me that, because without that, I don't even think so. Based off what you're saying, maybe we got 50% in the door with that, right? Because discrimination is still going to be a thing. But without that, we might be at 0. So we got to take baby steps. So if we got to take baby steps, then let's do that.
Well,
but I'm like,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Because we
no,
back and forth.
no. I guess I'm wondering, like, are we thinking the emotion of discrimination or the act of discrimination? There might not seem to be a difference, but I do think there is.
That's a good question.
And you know what?
Go ahead, jump in, Aaron.
To add another layer to what, because I thought that Darlene was going to go a certain place, but to add another layer, is affirmative action not a discriminatory type of policy?
God damn.
I knew you
is
adding Aaron was going. I could see it in his eyes. He wanted
That's where
I saw it in his eyes. I was like, yo, keep talking, Darlene, because I don't want to hear this from him.
That was phase 2. All they got to phase 1. Aaron's covering phase 2.
Well, okay, go ahead, Aaron. Let's break it down for us.
That's my question. Is it not discriminatory? Because if you look at the textbook definition of discrimination, it says recognition and understanding of the difference between one thing and another. And that's exactly what it's doing. It's discriminating, but it's discriminating in favor of us. Now, I understand that it's in favor of us because there are or were systems at play that were against us. So again, it was a way of evening the playing field. But again, if we're talking about 5 people needing to get into a specific school, and the school has test scores that determine who gets in and who doesn't get in, and I don't know, the 5 people that got in just happened to be white people, but it does not meet this affirmative action policy.
Dirty word.
Now you have to pull someone out of there in order to interject this other person. So now we're being discriminatory towards the person who did get the scores but didn't get admission.
Yeah, there are also lots of examples when you think about Asian students, so Chinese, Japanese, even Indian students, so Southeast Asian, where it's a reverse discrimination. They get discriminated against because on paper, they meet all the qualifications, but there's too many of them. So we gotta take away this quote unquote qualified person.
Right.
Yeah, you see how it gets really cloudy?
It gets very. It's a big gumbo of just annoyance and your racism, and it just keeps going. But and not to throw gumbo under this, but I just didn't think of another thing. But so we've spoken about so much. I did want to talk about to go back to the question that Aaron asked Nick, MVP, sorry, about whether or not he was racist, right? And I think why do you want to go back? No, wait, let me finish. I'm not done yet.
Is that just for MVP?
No.
Like we're ganging up on him.
No. Let me land the plane. Hold on. So
all right,
I think America has the, 1,000-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to race, and we haven't dealt with it. And so when stuff like that happens, which I've been in that situation, where I literally said, hey, we do this, we should do this. I'm an IT professional with damn near 15 years of experience. I know what I'm talking about. But then someone who else comes in and says the same thing and it gets assumed and they don't look like me, then I'm like, well, what is it, right? Because according to on paper, I have more experience than this person does. So why is this person's opinion better? So it's one of those things where it is, we need to deal with the race issue in America before we could even get to affirmative action. Because as long as the race part plays a part here, we're always going to, and you see it on both sides, because we shouldn't also automatically assume that it's race. Maybe it's like this person has a better relationship with that person and they know that. But I'm like, if we're doing it all based on skill set, then technically I'm the expert in this and you should weigh my opinion higher than the person who thinks that just fixing their computer is turning it off and on again. So it's like we've skipped ahead a step, right? We passed go and now we want $200, but it's like, hold on, you there's a whole half of the board that you missed and we're not dealing with it. So that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think race is the undertone that racism is the undertone that caused all of this conversation. And it's such a weird thing that we're still dealing with it. And now it's even more insidious, for lack of a better word, because like a lot of the thing is interweaved into stupid policies that we still have to deal with.
Yeah. Under that lens, affirmative action can be interpreted as a band-aid on a pus-filled wound. And we haven't addressed the pus-filled wound.
Yeah. And it being the United States of America, I don't know that problem will ever go away, because this is just a mindset thing. It doesn't have a face. It doesn't have a color. It doesn't have a position. Anyone sitting in any seat that can make decisions can be that thing, and you'll never know, because they could be the same person that hires someone that looks like us, but at the same accord, they have that mindset, and you'll never know. So the real underlying problem is just racism. And as stated, that affirmative action is the Band-Aid on it, but it's gotten to the place where it's like, it's extremely questionable now. And it's making other groups look at us as if we're the quote unquote token blacks. And I don't like having that label applied to myself.
Yeah. Do not at all. Well, we've touched on a lot of how we feel about it. What do we have any suggestions for? This is
solutions to this problem.
It's a layered cake. I don't even know how to format that correctly.
200 years of layers.
Jesus. But okay, so how would we want to see it in knowing America's makeup? Because we have to take into consideration that, yes, like Aaron pointed out, we're probably not going to see a huge change because we don't know. It's become such a hidden thing. What are the steps forward if we remove affirmative actions decisions in education and in job related issues? What is a good solution? What is a good, it's not a Band-Aid, or like what do we do? Like what happens now? What should happen now? And I'll give you a couple seconds to gather your thoughts. And
I actually wanted to ask a question in response to finding an answer to your question, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Do you think that it's problematic and I'm using the school system because it's one of the easiest examples, places of employment also are a very easy way of using this as an example, but I'll go with school. Do you think that it is a problem if a school is 98% white and then the other 2% is other?
I don't think it's a problem.
Do you think it's okay?
I think it does create a space to answer your question with a statement. It creates a space where you have a lot of unrepresented people. And that's some of the arguments that we hear, like especially in like different industries like Hollywood and stuff like that, where you have one unified voice, it feels like, and it's not open to other people. I don't know, it doesn't really answer the question, and maybe
No, the reason why I was asking that.
Well, hold on.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say before.
No,
before
I was like, what?
Yeah.
No, you go ahead, MVP.
No, I was gonna say, I do want to add to that question with the, hey, it does depend on the demographic that's around the school. Like, you're not gonna just throw that out on me, Aaron, and like, because if it's only white people, then that's not a problem.
All right, well, we can turn it around.
We're in an area like New York, and all the schools white, and there ain't no Spanish people, there ain't no Asian people, there ain't no black people, there ain't no Indian people, I think that's a problem. Like, you leave the school, and right across the street, there's an Indian family and an Asian family and a black family living right across the street, and they don't go to that school. That's
it doesn't really matter. I just use that as an example, but all black, all Indian, all Hispanic, it doesn't really matter, because the what I was trying to get at in my own head, at least, is if there's a specific group of people that are interested in this educational institution and they're the ones that are applying, and all of the admissions are score-based admissions, and this one group happens to be the ones that are getting the scores to be admitted, why is that a problem if that is how we're making the decision? Because this is all tying back into Stiles' question of how do we solve these things? And I think a lot of these things already have solutions in place. It's, for instance, with the job situation, if I'm the best man for the job, that's the man that should be getting hired. If I'm the highest scoring student, that's the student that should be admitted. Adding the additional layer is where the problem comes into play. If we are able to eliminate, and again, that'll never happen, but if you're able to eliminate the mindsets that are the purveyors of this racist mentality, then we have the systems in place for all these different places where affirmative action policies are in place. We have the way of removing that to admit the people, because those systems are built. It's just the representation, as MVP mentioned, that it seems like some people need that to happen. So now you remove what's already there as the layer of entry, and you start using representation as another layer of entry. That's why I was asking if one group is overrepresented.
Well, actually, Darlene, I knew you had this point, so you go ahead and then I ask.
Yeah, I don't know. I might be becoming Alice, going down too far the rabbit hole here, but I wonder if, so my problem has never been with if you have the highest scores, if you were applying, but then we could discuss how, well, we know a lot of schools use certain scoring programs that may not be the best to attribute, should you be in this school or not? Because, I mean, I'll be quite frank, if we're just going to use the school example, I'm a horrible test taker. If you were just looking at my scores for me to get into any school, I was not getting into any of those schools. And I've had peers, regardless of the color of their skin, gotten much better scores, and I would never, ever, ever want to work with them or hire them for anything else. So I wonder, it's like, I don't know if it's the systems we have in place, like the scoring or anything. I still think those factor into the Band-Aid issue. We haven't fully addressed the pus that's coming out, and it is a mindset thing. And I don't know, it's hard to change behaviors in a small setting. It's hard to change behaviors with your family. So trying to change behaviors with millions of people on a national scale might be hard, but we all seem to need a national come to Jesus moment of, this is not working out. How do we address it? I think some of the ways we've tried to address it when it comes to the corporate side is, well, we know we're going to have customers of different backgrounds, different ethnicities and races that are going to be buying our products. So we should therefore hire more quote unquote diverse groups. But even that seems to be, that's a solution, a step in the right direction. But I don't know, I don't have the answer for getting to that come to Jesus moment for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. My one other question too, like to Aaron's question to my question was I had to do around with the representation part, because the thing is, there's a lot of cases where people are comfortable with, I was trying to find the word, I know there's a word for this, but you're comfortable with the people who look like you, who have the same I want to say history, or you're brought up similar way. It's like I look at the fact that three of us on this call are all from Trinidad and Tobago, and it made our life slightly easier to interpret. So if we have a group of governing body that doesn't necessarily represent everybody, then you end up with the people, like, for example, it's like, to use a very shallow example, it's like if you brought curry from a Jamaican to a Trinidadian, immediately we're going to be like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this.
I see what you mean with the related.
But yeah. I said, point out, I didn't say anything other than just bringing the curry. We didn't say whether it's good or bad, but we've broken down the problems with America using West Indian conversation. If you brought curry to a Trinidadian, 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to be like, that's not it, right? Am I wrong?
I mean, unless you're Jamaican out there, apologize.
Listen, they can jerk the hell out of anything. But that sounded so horrible.
Yeah, I was like, you gonna clean yourself up, bro?
No, that's what it's called. That is what it's called. Anyway, their jerk food is amazing. Rival to none. You see these TikTok people putting jerk seasoning on something and calling it jerk, I want to ban their accounts. That's a different conversation. But there's certain things that we're going to understand. And honestly, like MVP, I know you understand because you've been interacting with us, but I don't know, could you tell the difference between a Jamaican jerk, a Jamaican curry, and a Trinidadian curry?
No, sorry.
Right.
I'm not jumping on that ledge.
And if MVP is the person that's making the determination on whose curry is entering the competition, can he really make a good determination?
And I like that you're saying that, because I think that, like,
we took race out of it.
We're stuck on Aaron's question, but like, I think that sometimes you have to go out there and find those people who's going to help you not look stupid when that chicken comes in your face, right? Like, like, yo, as soon as they look at me, I'm like, yo, Styles, Aaron, Darlene, could y'all go ahead and answer this person's question? But we're a team, though, right? Because we're all trying to get to this goal, right? So I'm like, is it racist to be like, I'm going to say this.
Okay.
Let me go find a black person who knows more about this.
If it's something cultural and you have...
If it's something cultural. Yeah. And I'm trying not to be like ghetto with it, right? Like something like...
How you with the ghetto?
I don't know, like, yo, man, I need to really know how to make this Kool-Aid.
Well, how do we get to Kool-Aid?
Where are we right now?
We went down a rabbit hole.
We're going to go find a black person to make Kool-Aid. But maybe they know more about hip-hop and what's like appropriate, like, when we're doing commercials, like, I think some of these fashion brands didn't have those minorities on their team. So I'm like, if you're used to being around these people, to go back to what Styles was saying, if you're used to being around this certain people, I think you do have to put the effort in to find people who are culture experts on this. And I'm like, is that racist? Go back to Aaron, is that racist?
Or is that affirmative action?
Yeah. Like, as it was stated here, it's one of those things that we're not going to have the answer, because this is something that has been going on for so long, hundreds of years. We're not going to find the answer. But what I think is more important is what is a fair way of being able to handle something like this. And I don't know, is the overall way of thinking here is that we do need it to be in place, or is it that we need to make some sort of change? Are the right wing panel and the Supreme Court, are they wrong in removing this? Like, what do you guys think? At least not in terms of a solution, but what could be a better way of handling something like this, as opposed to affirmative action? Because I think it's clear no one wants to be considered a token black, but at the same accord, no one wants to work extremely hard to get somewhere and then not get there because there's someone with a mindset that says, you know what, I'm not putting this person in there. I'm going to hire a person that looks like me.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew when we went down this road, this was going to be one of those that's like, you know, a head knocker, because we're like, you know, if we could come up with a solution and we could give an answer to this, you know, we would have. We probably should be state officials or something like that. You know, like it's a large thing, right? So I don't know. I mean, the question is, like, to your point, like, did the Supreme Court do something right here? Because even by removing this, we're creating a conversation where we're like, well, what's the right way to go about this?
Right.
Which is crazy to think, because they've been doing some wild stuff.
So, and that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, just to stamp something, because I ain't never been a pussyfoot, right? So just nah. You're gonna
do your thing.
No more tap dancing for MVP.
Okay,
I'm a changed man, Aaron.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say yes, we need it, but we also, to go back to Styles, we need to have the conversations, right? So I don't know necessarily if the Supreme Court is right, but I do think that there needs to be more conversations and let it be like normal to have the conversation, right? Because I don't think we should just do away with it. I know we want to be in the future where like racism isn't a thing and we're in a different climate, but it's still out there. The beast is out there. So I'm like, I don't think we can just move it all together, but I do think that we need to make sure it makes sense when we apply it and it's not being abused for either side. Dropping the mic.
I think I agree with you on that. I don't think that we should be put in a place where we're ripping the Band-Aid off without first discussing ways of changing the system where it still works for being fair to everyone else, but at the same time doesn't lock us out because of the fact that we are still living in the United States of America. And you know what? Even if you remove the US from this, the world as a whole, you could apply this in places like even in Trinidad, where we're from. I know Black people are definitely treated in a certain manner there when you compare us to our East Indian counterparts. That, you know, so it's something that I don't think we're ever going to see a real true solution to, but I do agree with MVP's stance. It shouldn't just be removed. There needs to be conversations. There needs to be a way of figuring out how can we now change this system to adapt to the current climate of the political system in the United States, because it is not the same as it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 80 years ago. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
Totally.
I don't know if my response is actually going to answer anything, but I'm wondering, is the solution the reverse to what we're doing with climate change? And hear me out on this. So with climate change, I think we can all agree, if we as individuals are doing like we're recycling, that's not really going to be moving the needle.
Right.
What we need is larger corporations to be essentially changing how they operate, how they make products. That's really going to move the needle. The reason why I'm thinking is the reverse, the solution here, in that we need, on an individual basis, like, I don't know if this is going to sound crazy. Do we need like a playground where all kids of different backgrounds and stuff just are forced to play together, and then you're just constantly replicating that in different environments? I don't really know, because I think once we have those conversations, once you understand different perspectives, you do recognize there is value in having different groups represented, and particularly something that matters to the United States. Your revenue, your bottom line matters when it comes to representation. So I don't think that is not answering. That's a backwards way of actually answering. I didn't really answer the question, but there's I definitely pussyfooting there, but there's certainly something to be said about maybe the Supreme Court was thinking that way, like, hey, we're too big to really solve this, so we leave it up to the individuals and hopefully it'll trickle down. I don't think that's the best solution, but I don't have anything that can really place it. So right. I don't know.
Styles?
I want to hang out with that idea for a second, right? Hang out with the idea of getting people, I don't want to use the word forced, but forcing people to hang out with different groups, right? And for me, I think it's important, right? I think even for how I was brought up, I've been able to move in different groups because of that exposure, right? It's given me, like, one of my things my parents say is like, when we was growing up, we didn't see color, right? Obviously we see color, but it wasn't like, because I grew up having an understand of different groups, I didn't have this like, hey, because you're this type of person, I have to be scared of you or feel some type of way for you. At this point in my life, I think everybody is a person, and it's like, yo, that's a black thing. It's like, it's not a black thing. It's a people thing in my mind, right? And so I do think the reason why I'm able to have that even idea is because I've went to schools that had multiple groups of people in the school. So I was able to, learn how to maneuver in the world. If you're going to be a grown up, you're going to have to, especially now as more and more groups are just, everybody's like mixing and diversity and like a lot of things are going on, right? You can't be siloed like that into this one group of people that you're comfortable with, because you're going to have a hard time maneuvering in society if you don't learn how to work with other groups. It's literally why they have like team building, right? Like get the team together. You got to learn how to work with each other. So it would be nice to have some form of that. I don't know if I want to use the word force, but like, I do think that you might have to put the pressure on some people to, go outside of their like community zone.
Comfort zone works. Comfort zone still works.
Yeah. Okay. You get what I'm saying. You get what I'm putting down.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that goes on to the bigger conversation about representation, and that's what I think we've gone full circle again, because the representation conversation is something that I feel that is actually a little bit more important than diversity. But then, how do you get to representation if you don't include people? So it's a cyclical problem that we now have. And just in this conversation, we've done, a full 360 of footing. Yeah, see, we'll cut that out.
Please.
We've done
a whole 360 of pussyfooting. Yeah. Can we even say the word on YouTube?
I think if you say the words as close together
think
as quickly as
that's
possible,
not what
you're
it
good.
means, though. It has nothing to do with
okay.
female genitalia.
Right. Well, we'll have to do some editing and make sure we don't get flagged. Anyway, but yeah, I think we've done a full dance. We've done the hokey pokey and turned all the way around, and we're right back to where we started. Whereas, like, well, it did serve a purpose, but did it work as well as it was supposed to? Probably not. What do we do from here? So, I mean, we can keep going. I don't know if anybody had any thoughts on this before we. I think this is it's a multi-layered cake, and I realize a lot of my analogies today have been food related, but it's a multi-layered cake, and it's not great. So, I don't know what we do. So, anybody, any final thoughts?
Peace and love, man.
What'd you say?
Peace and love. Peace and love.
I was going to say,
solution.
because of the diverse school that I went to, we actually learned the hokey pokey in PE, and we learned the Macarena. And I'm like, I'm going to tell y'all right now, you ain't learning that. Yeah, we learned the...
That's a lot of movement. That is moving every part of your body.
And I'm like, when I went to some black schools, they wasn't messing with that. So what I'm saying is, now, because I grew up so diverse, I can crush the Macarena. So, like, everybody should just like I'm just chatting at this point. Like, everybody should find groups to learn new things, right?
My high school was very diverse, and we definitely didn't do the Macarena.
Neither. You were in a different type of school. I don't know what that was. Any final thoughts, Darlene or Aaron?
I think we have to wait and see what will be the effects of removing affirmative action because maybe it did serve enough of a purpose to get enough folks in positions of leadership at academia, in government, in the private sector that will constantly have that mindset of we need to make sure we have representation in mind. My hope is that it doesn't go the route of Roe v. Wade, where you remove this security with nothing else in place. People are still going to have sex. Babies are still going to be had. And there's nothing to basically accommodate any of the downsides of that. I'm hoping it doesn't get to that way. So I'm trying to stay more positive and say, let's wait and see, because it may not be that dismal.
Right. And I think that's kind of the approach I'm going to have to take as well, is really waiting and seeing where this goes, because you never know. Maybe this is a system that was actually holding us back, because statistically speaking, they say that it's mainly white women that are the ones that are, I guess, reaping the rewards of this affirmative action system. So maybe it is holding us back. Maybe it's keeping us out of places that we need to be. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes. I still do stand on the stance where it should not have just been just let's rip it out and see what happens. But sometimes that's how change is forced, by just taking an all or nothing approach. So we'll see. Hopefully it's for the better and not for the worse. I don't think that as a country we could be heading backwards, but I do think that we're in a place where if we do start going backwards, there's enough of a system in place where someone's going to step in at some point. I mean, even with our voting capabilities, we can change this. So we'll have to wait and just see.
Yep. Any final thoughts, Macarena MVP?
If you don't know what it is, go look it up. Link in the descriptions. I'm like, everybody gonna be out here doing it on TikTok. Like, dang, see how things come full circle?
Full circle. Hey, it's like fashion.
Bring it back.
Tap dancing, Macarena.
Yep. All right.
Dancing and food.
Hey,
there you go.
That's what brings cultures together, man.
That's
dancing and food.
Yes.
Dancing and food. Can't go
Enough
wrong.
of this nonsense. Let's just dance and eat.
But I mean, then we get into the challenge of like some people spicy food might be too spicy for other people. So it's like, what do you do? Look, you see, you just open another layer cake. It's
I
another
didn't,
layer.
because culturally we can all come together. And when it comes to food, you might have a taste for spicy, but hey, there's other types of food in that culture that can fit your palate. Hey. Trust me.
Representation.
Exactly. If it's the one thing that brings people together, dancing, yes, for sure, clearly. But there's nowhere in the world that you can go that you can tell me that food isn't bringing people together. I've gone to the most hood of hood spots and seen the most white collar individual in there, unbuttoned, having the food. I've seen it. So food brings people together. Trust me. It's 100%. Not. It's the one thing that is not pulling people apart.
Well, on that note, I want to thank everybody that made it to the end of this podcast, because, gosh, we took on a lot in this one. Definitely want to shout out Darlene and Aaron for showing up to this and helping us give, some color to this very colorful issue.
Not a lot of diversity here. We need affirmative action.
Really
listen.
Well, we got a woman. How about that? Yes.
I'm glad you said that. I wasn't going to say it.
We weren't going to touch that. But no, I mean, we this may be something that we address at another point with more people. Right now, a lot of our podcasts have been our internal crew of people that we could get quickly to record. So, we'll definitely try to have some more representation here to be the change that we want to see. But
going forward, I will no longer identify as a black male. That way we will have some diversity. How about that? Does that help?
Wow, you're getting us canceled. You're getting us canceled a little at the end of the show. Anyway, if you made it this far, we appreciate you and you taking the time to try to unpack this very seriously complicated issue. So if you haven't already, go ahead and give us a follow. And this is Juxtaposed. We'll see y'all on the next complicated conversation. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.